Dr. Sarah Chun was drinking her morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. The sound cut through the quiet of her small medical station like a knife. She had been on Kepler 442b for 6 months now, serving as the only human doctor on this distant world. Most days were peaceful, treating minor injuries from the diplomatic staff or helping with routine health checks. This was not one of those days. Sarah rushed to her communication panel. The screen flickered to life, showing the face of Commander Torres from the main diplomatic building. "Sarah, we need you now," Torres said, his voice tight with worry. "The Zephyrians are bringing someone in. They say it's urgent. What kind of injuries?" Sarah asked, already moving toward her medical supplies. "They won't say. Just that she's dying and their doctors refuse to help." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The Zephyrians were proud people. If their own doctors wouldn't help someone, it meant something was very wrong. She grabbed her emergency kit and ran toward the landing pad. The Zephyrian ship landed with a loud roar. Sarah had seen these ships before, but this one was different. It was bigger, decorated with golden symbols that seemed to glow in the alien sunlight. Royal guards stepped out first, their tall blue bodies covered in shining armor. They moved like dancers, each step perfectly planned. Behind them came 2 figures carrying someone on a stretcher. Sarah's breath caught in her throat when she saw the patient. The alien girl was young, maybe 20 in human years. Her skin was pale blue, almost white, and covered with strange crystal growths that looked like jewelry. But these crystals were broken and bleeding a bright silver liquid that Sarah realized must be blood. "Bring her inside, quickly," Sarah said, leading them toward her medical bay. The guards hesitated. Their leader, a tall alien with golden markings on his face, spoke in heavily accented English. "You are certain you can help? Our doctors say she will die anyway. Why won't your doctors treat her?" Sarah asked as she prepared her examination table. The guard's expression became cold. "Princess Veltar is a traitor. She works against the king. Our doctors believe she should face the consequences of her choices." Sarah felt anger rise in her chest. A doctor's job is to save lives, not judge them. "Put her on the table." As they lifted the princess onto the examination table, Sarah got her first good look at the injuries. This was worse than she had imagined. The crystal structures on the girl's arms and chest were shattered. Silver blood leaked from dozens of cuts. Burns covered most of her left side. But worst of all, the princess was unconscious and barely breathing. Sarah began her examination, trying to remember everything she knew about Zephyrian biology. It wasn't much. The species kept most of their medical knowledge secret. She knew they had internal organs like humans, but arranged differently. Their bones were made of living crystal that could grow and change. Their blood carried both nutrients and electrical signals throughout their body. What happened to her? Sarah asked while checking the princess's pulse. The heartbeat felt wrong, too fast and unsteady. "Explosion," the guard said simply. She was trying to destroy military supplies. The blast threw her against a wall. Sarah nodded, focusing on her patient. The princess's breathing was getting weaker. Whatever she was going to do, she needed to do it fast. She started with the bleeding. Human medical techniques said to stop bleeding first, then worry about everything else. But as she tried to close the wounds, she realized the silver blood wouldn't clot like human blood. It seemed to flow like liquid metal, always moving. "Does your blood normally clot?" she asked the guards. They looked confused. "Clot? Stop flowing when you're injured. Our bodies repair themselves differently than yours," the leader said. "The blood carries healing crystals to damaged areas. But hers is not working." Sarah thought quickly. If the blood carried healing materials, then maybe the problem was that those materials were damaged too. She looked closer at the silver liquid and saw tiny fragments of broken crystal floating in it. "The healing crystals in her blood are broken," she said. "That's why she's not healing." The guards exchanged glances. "This is why our doctors refuse to help. When the healing crystals break, there is nothing that can be done. She will die slowly." "Maybe your doctors don't know everything," Sarah said firmly. She began working with tools she had never used for anything like this. Using her medical scanner, she tried to understand what the broken crystals were supposed to do. The scanner showed that they carried electrical signals, like tiny computers in the blood dots. Sarah had an idea. It was crazy, but it might work. She connected her medical computer to the princess's body using the scanner. If the broken crystals were like computers, maybe she could replace their signals with her own equipment. "What are you doing?" the guard leader asked, stepping closer. "Trying to help your princess's body remember how to heal itself," Sarah said, adjusting the computer settings. Slowly, the princess's heartbeat began to steady. The silver blood started moving more normally through her body. Sarah watched the scanner readings with growing excitement. It was working, but the princess was still unconscious, still badly injured. Sarah realized she had only bought them time. The real healing would take much longer. "She needs rest and care," Sarah told the guards. "I can help her, but it will take days, maybe weeks." The guard leader looked uncomfortable. "The king expects us to return soon. If she's going to die anyway." "She's not going to die," Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. "But I need time to help her properly." The guards talked quietly among themselves in their own language. Finally, the leader turned back to Sarah. "We will stay for 3 days. If she is not better by then, we return to the king with news of her death." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. 3 days to save the life of an alien princess, using medical knowledge she was making up as she went along. But as she looked down at the young girl on her table, Sarah made a promise to herself. She would not let this patient die. Not on her watch. Sarah worked through the night, her hands steady despite her exhaustion. The princess lay still on the medical table, her breathing shallow but regular. The computer connections Sarah had rigged were keeping the girl's healing system working, but just barely. The Zephyrian guards had set up camp in her waiting room, taking turns watching Sarah work. They didn't trust her, she could tell. Every few hours, one of them would ask if the princess was getting better. Sarah always gave the same answer. "She's stable." But stable wasn't enough. Sarah could see that her patient was fighting something more than just physical injuries. The princess's body should have been healing faster, even with the broken crystals in her blood. Something else was wrong. Around dawn, Sarah noticed something strange. When she spoke to the unconscious princess, explaining what she was doing, the girl's heartbeat would change slightly. It was small, but Sarah's instruments caught it every time. "Interesting," Sarah said aloud, watching the monitors. "Can you hear me?" The heartbeat quickened just a little. Sarah had seen this before in human patients. Sometimes, when people were badly hurt, their bodies would shut down emotionally to protect them from pain. But this also slowed down physical healing. The mind and body were connected in ways that most doctors didn't fully understand. She pulled a chair next to the table and sat down close to the princess. "My name is Sarah," she said softly. "I'm a doctor, and I'm here to help you. You're safe now." The princess's eyes moved under her closed eyelids. Sarah smiled. "That's right. You can hear me. Good. Let me tell you what I'm going to do next." For the next several hours, Sarah talked to her patient while she worked. She explained every procedure, every medicine, every adjustment to the equipment. She told the princess about Earth, about human medicine, about how different species could help each other. The guards watched this with confusion. "Why do you speak to her?" the leader asked. "She cannot answer." "Maybe not with words," Sarah said. "But her body is answering. Look at the monitors. The guard looked at the screens, showing the princess's vital signs. They were getting stronger. I do not understand, he said. In human medicine, we believe the mind affects the body, Sarah explained. When patients feel safe and cared for, they heal better. We call it bedside manner. This is not Zephyrian way, the guard said. I'm not Zephyrian, Sarah replied. By the second day, the princess was showing real improvement. The silver blood was flowing normally, and the broken crystals in her system were slowly being replaced by new ones. Her body was growing. But Sarah noticed something else that worried her. The new crystals were growing wrong. They were too dark, too sharp. Instead of the smooth, clear crystals she had seen on healthy Zephyrians, these looked angry and jagged. Sarah had another idea. She brought her portable music player from her personal quarters. What is that? The guard asked when Sarah started setting it up near the princess's bed. Music, Sarah said. Sound waves. I think your people's crystals respond to specific frequencies. She played different types of music, watching the monitors carefully. Most songs had no effect, but when she played classical music with deep, resonating tones, the princess's crystal structures began to change. The dark, jagged edges softened. The crystals grew clearer and smoother. How did you know to do this? The guard asked, amazement in his voice. I didn't, Sarah admitted. I'm guessing. But I noticed that your people move very gracefully, like dancers. And your speech has musical qualities. I thought maybe your bodies respond to harmony. The guard was quiet for a long moment. Our doctors learn medicine from books and computers. They follow procedures exactly. They would never think to try music. Sometimes the best medicine isn't in the books, Sarah said. Late on the second day, the princess's eyes opened. Sarah was adjusting the music player when she heard a soft sound. She turned and found pale blue eyes looking at her. The princess tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. Don't try to talk yet, Sarah said gently. You've been hurt badly, but you're getting better. The princess's eyes moved around the room, taking in the human medical equipment, the Zephyrian guards, and finally settling back on Sarah. She whispered something in her own language. The guard leader stepped forward and listened carefully. He looked surprised. What did she say? Sarah asked. She said thank you for the music. And she asked why the human doctor is being kind to a traitor. Sarah felt her heart clench. Tell her that doctors help people, not judge them. Everyone deserves care when they're hurt. The guard translated, and the princess's eyes widened. She spoke again, longer this time. She says this is not what she was taught about humans, the guard said. She was told humans were cold and calculating, only interested in profit and power. Wow, Sarah said with a small smile. I guess she was taught wrong. The princess tried to sit up, but Sarah gently pushed her back down. Not yet, Sarah said. Your body is still healing. The crystals in your bones need more time to grow properly. Over the next few hours, the princess drifted in and out of consciousness, but each time she woke up, she seemed a little stronger. Sarah continued talking to her, explaining what was happening, asking simple questions about how she felt. During one conversation, the princess managed to whisper in broken English, Why? You help me? Sarah thought about it for a moment. Because you're hurt, and I'm a doctor. That's all that matters. The princess stared at her with those pale blue eyes. Not Zephyrian way. No, Sarah agreed. It's the human way. As the second night ended, Sarah felt cautiously optimistic. The princess was definitely improving. Her vital signs were strong, her crystals were growing properly, and she was staying conscious for longer periods. But Sarah knew the hardest part was still coming. The guards had given her 3 days. Tomorrow was the third day, and while the princess was healing physically, Sarah was beginning to understand that there were deeper wounds that needed attention. The girl had called herself a traitor. The guards treated her like a criminal. Sarah was starting to realize that she wasn't just treating injuries from an explosion. She was treating a young woman whose own people had rejected her. And that, Sarah thought, might be the most important healing of all. On the morning of the third day, Princess Veltar was finally strong enough to sit up. Sarah helped her move carefully, watching for any signs of pain or weakness. The princess's crystals had grown back beautifully, clear and strong, glowing softly with an inner light. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked, checking the girl's pulse. "Better," Veltar said in careful English. She had been practicing with Sarah over the past day. Still weak, but alive. The guard leader approached them. "Princes, we must prepare to return home. The king expects a report." Veltar's expression became sad and distant. "Yes, I suppose he does." Sarah noticed how the princess's whole body seemed to shrink when the guard mentioned her father. The soft glow in her crystals dimmed slightly. "Before you go," Sarah said to the guard, "I need to check her injuries one more time, privately." The guard looked uncertain, but nodded. He and his companion stepped outside the medical bay. When they were alone, Sarah sat down next to Veltar's bed. "You don't want to go home, do you?" she asked gently. Veltar looked down at her hands. "Home is not the right word for where I am going. Can you tell me what happened? Why you were hurt?" For a long moment, Veltar was quiet. Then she began to speak, slowly and carefully. "My father is the king, yes, but he's not a good king. He rules with fear and pain. Our people have classes like levels. High class, middle class, low class. The low-class people live badly. They have no food, no medicine, no hope." Sarah listened carefully, remembering what the guard had said about Veltar being a traitor. "I tried to tell my father this was wrong," Veltar continued. "I said we should help the low-class people. Give them medicine when they are sick. Give them food when they are hungry. But my father says they must stay low to keep order." "So you decided to help them yourself?" Sarah asked. Veltar nodded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I took medicine from the royal stores. I gave it to sick children in the low-class areas. I took food from the palace kitchens and brought it to hungry families." "That was very brave," Sarah said. "My father was angry. He said I was betraying my own class. He ordered me to stop." Veltar's voice became stronger. "But I could not stop. How can you watch children die when you have medicine that could save them?" Sarah felt a warmth in her chest. This young alien girl understood something that many humans struggled with. That compassion was more important than rules or social order. "What about the explosion?" Sarah asked. Veltar's expression grew darker. "My father was planning something terrible. He was building weapons, special weapons that would hurt many people at once. He planned to use them against the low-class areas if they protested for better treatment. So you tried to stop him. I found where the weapons were stored. I thought if I could destroy them, I could save thousands of lives. But I made a mistake. The explosion was bigger than I expected." Sarah understood now why the Zephyrian doctors had refused to treat Veltar. In their society, she wasn't just a rebel. She was someone who had tried to protect the weak against the strong. And that was seen as unforgivable. "Veltar," Sarah said carefully, "what do you think will happen when you go back?" The princess was quiet for a long moment. "My father will probably have me killed. Or maybe he will lock me away forever so I cannot cause more trouble. And you're willing to face that?" Veltar looked up at Sarah with those pale blue eyes. And Sarah saw something there that reminded her of the best human qualities: courage, compassion, and an unshakable sense of right and wrong. "Dr. Sarah," Veltar said, You helped me when everyone else said I should die. You treated me with kindness when everyone else treated me like a criminal. You showed me that there are people in the universe who believe in helping others, no matter what. You already believed that, Sarah said. That's why you were helping the low-class people in the first place. But I thought I was alone. I thought maybe I was crazy for thinking this way. Now I know that humans think this way too. That gives me hope. Sarah felt tears in her own eyes now. Veltar, you're not crazy. Compassion isn't a weakness or a mental illness. It's what makes life worth living. The door opened and the guard leader stepped back inside. Princess, it is time. Veltar stood up slowly, still weak but determined. She turned to Sarah and took her hands. Thank you, she said. Not just for healing my body. For healing my spirit too. Wait, Sarah said suddenly. An idea was forming in her mind. What if you didn't have to face this alone? I do not understand. Sarah thought quickly. She was supposed to be neutral, a diplomatic observer. But sometimes being neutral meant allowing injustice to continue. And sometimes the right thing to do was to take a side. What if someone could speak to your father on your behalf? What if someone could explain that what you did wasn't treason, but heroism? The guard leader stepped forward. The king does not listen to outsiders about family matters. Maybe, Sarah said. But I'm not just an outsider. I'm the doctor who saved his daughter's life when his own doctors couldn't. That might mean something to him. Veltar's eyes widened. You would do that? Risk your position here to help me. Sarah thought about everything she had learned about this brave young woman. She thought about the low-class Zephyrian children, who were sick and hungry, while medicine and food sat unused in royal storehouses. She thought about the weapons that had been built to use against peaceful protesters. Yes, Sarah said firmly. I would. The guard leader looked shocked. Dr. Chun, the king is not like his daughter. He will not be grateful for your interference. Maybe not, Sarah said. But sometimes doing the right thing isn't about gratitude. Sometimes it's just about doing what's right. Veltar squeezed Sarah's hands. You are taking a great risk for someone you barely know. Sarah smiled. I know enough. I know you're someone who risked her life to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. I know you're someone who chose to do right, even when everyone around you said it was wrong. That's all I need to know. As they prepared to leave, Sarah made her decision. She would go with them to see the king. She would tell him what she had learned about his daughter. And she would do everything in her power to make him understand that Veltar wasn't a traitor. She was exactly the kind of leader the Zephyrian people needed. It was risky. It could end her diplomatic career. It could even be dangerous, but it was the human thing to do. The journey to the Zephyrian capital took 2 days by ship. Sarah had never seen a city like it before. Tall crystal towers reached toward the sky, glowing with soft blue and purple lights. Everything was perfectly organized, with clean lines and mathematical precision. It was beautiful, but cold. King Morden's palace was the largest building Sarah had ever seen. The walls were made of the same living crystal as Zephyrian bones, and they seemed to pulse with energy. Guards stood at every entrance, their armor shining like mirrors. When they arrived, Sarah was taken to a waiting room while Veltar was brought to see her father. Sarah sat alone for what felt like hours, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. She was just a human doctor on an alien world. What could she possibly say to a king? Finally, the doors opened. Veltar walked in, followed by the largest Zephyrian Sarah had ever seen. King Morden was at least 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and arms covered in golden crystal formations. His skin was darker blue than his daughter's, and his eyes were sharp and intelligent. He wore robes that seemed to move by themselves, changing color as he walked. So, the king said in perfect English, his voice deep and commanding, You are the human who thinks she can heal what our doctors cannot. Sarah stood up, trying to look more confident than she felt. Your Majesty, I am Dr. Sarah Chan. I was honored to help Princess Veltar recover from her injuries. Help her recover, the king repeated. Yes, I see that you have healed her body. But tell me, human doctor, has she told you why she was injured? She told me about the weapon storage, yes. The king's expression became dangerous. And what do you think of my daughter's actions? Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. I think she showed tremendous courage in trying to protect innocent people from violence. The king stepped closer to Sarah, towering over her. Innocent people? Those low-class creatures are not innocent. They are lazy, worthless, and dangerous. They constantly demand things they have not earned. My daughter was foolish to risk herself for them. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest, but forced herself to stay calm. Your Majesty, I spent my whole career treating people from all different backgrounds. In my experience, everyone deserves basic medical care and enough food to survive. That's not asking for something they haven't earned. That's asking for basic dignity. Dignity must be earned through service to the state, the king said coldly. Even children? Even babies? Sarah asked. What service do they provide? For just a moment, the king looked uncertain. Then his expression hardened again. You speak well, human, he said. But words are easy. My daughter tells me that your methods saved her life when our best doctors said she would die. She claims that human medicine is somehow superior to ours. I wouldn't say superior, Sarah said carefully. Just different. The king walked around Sarah in a circle, studying her. Our medicine is based on science and logic. We repair what is broken and replace what is damaged. It is efficient and precise. Human medicine includes those things too, Sarah said. But we also believe that emotional and mental health affect physical healing. The king laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Emotions, feelings, weakness. If emotions are weakness, then why did caring for your daughter's emotional needs help her heal faster? The king stopped walking. You think you are clever, human. Very well. I will give you a chance to prove that your methods are truly better than ours. Sarah felt a chill of fear. What kind of chance? I have soldiers. Warriors who have fought in many battles to maintain order in our kingdom. Some of them have been wounded in ways that our doctors cannot fix. They have been declared beyond help. The king gestured to 2 guards, who opened another set of doors. If human medicine is truly superior, you will heal them. All of them. If you succeed, I will consider what you have said about my daughter. If I fail? Sarah asked, though she was afraid of the answer. If you fail, it will prove that humans are inferior in all ways, including judgment. You will be executed for interfering in royal family matters. And my daughter will be executed for allowing herself to be corrupted by inferior thinking. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Veltar stepped forward. Father, please. Dr. Sarah was only trying to help. She should not be punished for my choices. If her methods truly work, then there will be no punishment, the king said. But if they fail, it will prove that human influence is dangerous and must be eliminated. Sarah looked at the open doorway, wondering what awaited her beyond it. The king was clearly testing more than just her medical skills. He was testing everything she believed about the value of compassion and human dignity. How many soldiers? She asked. 12, the king replied. All of them injured in different ways. All of them declared hopeless by our best doctors. What kind of injuries? You will see. Some are physical. Some are other things. Sarah understood. Some of the soldiers had mental or emotional wounds, the kind that Zephyrian doctors wouldn't even recognize as real medical problems. How long do I have? 7 days, the king said. If even one of them is not fully healed by then, you both die. Sarah looked at Veltar, who gave her an encouraging nod. The princess believed in her, even facing death. Sarah thought about everything she had learned in medical school. She thought about all the patients she had treated over the years. She thought about the oath she had taken to do no harm and to help people in need. I'll do it, she said. The king smiled, but it wasn't a kind expression. Excellent. Guards, show the human doctor to her patients. As they walked toward the doorway, Veltar whispered to Sarah, Thank you for trying. Whatever happens, you have already shown me more kindness than anyone in my life. We're not done yet, Sarah whispered back. I'm going to heal those soldiers, and then your father is going to learn something about the value of compassion. But as they entered the next room and Sarah saw the 12 wounded soldiers lying on beds, she wondered if she had just promised something impossible. The soldiers looked terrible. Some had physical injuries that looked months old and infected. Others seemed physically fine, but stared at nothing with empty eyes. All of them looked like they had given up hope. Sarah rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She had 7 days to save not just these 12 soldiers, but also herself, Veltar, and maybe even the future of compassion in the Zephyrian kingdom. It was going to be the biggest challenge of her life. Sarah spent the first day just talking to the wounded soldiers. The Zephyrian doctors had given her their medical files, but the information was cold and clinical. It told her what was wrong with their bodies, but nothing about who they were as people. The soldiers were suspicious of her at first. They had been told that humans were weak and untrustworthy. But Sarah was patient. She introduced herself to each one, asked their names, and listened to their stories. By the end of the second day, she began to understand what was really wrong with them. Soldier Kethmer had burns on his arms that wouldn't heal. The Zephyrian doctors said his healing crystals were damaged beyond repair. But when Sarah talked to him, she learned that the burns came from a fire he had set on the king's orders, a fire that destroyed a low-class neighborhood. The burns weren't healing because Kethmer felt guilty about hurting innocent people. Soldier Zarthik couldn't sleep. He would lie awake for days, then collapse from exhaustion. The doctors said his brain chemistry was broken. But Sarah discovered that he had nightmares about a raid where he was ordered to arrest parents and separate them from their children. He couldn't sleep because every time he closed his eyes, he heard children crying. Soldier after soldier had the same pattern. Physical symptoms that wouldn't respond to treatment because the real wounds were in their hearts and minds. On the third day, Sarah tried something the Zephyrian doctors would never think of. She gathered all 12 soldiers in one room and asked them to talk to each other about what they had been ordered to do. This is not medical treatment, one of the soldiers protested. Talking will not heal damaged crystals. Maybe, Sarah said, but it might heal damaged spirits. Slowly, carefully, the soldiers began to share their experiences. They talked about orders that felt wrong. They talked about hurting people who reminded them of their own families. They talked about feeling trapped between loyalty to their king and their own sense of right and wrong. As they talked, something amazing began to happen. The soldier with the burns that wouldn't heal started to show new crystal growth. The soldier who couldn't sleep began to relax for the first time in months. Physical healing followed emotional healing. By the 5th day, 8 of the 12 soldiers were showing dramatic improvement. But 4 still seemed hopeless. Sarah realized these 4 had suffered the deepest wounds. They had been ordered to do things so terrible that they couldn't forgive themselves. They needed more than just talking. Sarah remembered something her grandmother had told her when she was young. Sometimes the only way to heal from doing wrong is to find a way to do right. She went to King Mordin with a request that surprised him. You want to take my soldiers to the low-class areas? The king asked. Why? Because they need to see that the people they hurt are real people with families and feelings, just like them, Sarah explained. And because helping instead of hurting might give them a reason to heal. The king was skeptical, but he was also curious about Sarah's methods. He agreed to let her try. Sarah took the 4 soldiers to the poorest areas of the city. At first, the low-class Zephyrians were afraid. These were the same soldiers who had raided their homes and arrested their family members. But Sarah helped them understand that the soldiers were sick and needed to make amends. Slowly, carefully, she arranged for the soldiers to help instead of harm. They brought medicine to sick children. They helped repair homes that had been damaged in raids. They listened to stories from families who had been hurt by the king's policies. It was hard work. The soldiers had to face the pain they had caused. The low-class families had to find forgiveness for people who had hurt them. But gradually, healing began to happen on both sides. On the 7th day, all 12 soldiers stood before King Mordun, healthy and whole. The king stared at them in amazement. "This is impossible. Our doctors said they could never be healed." "They couldn't be healed by Zephyrian methods," Sarah said, "because Zephyrian medicine only treats the body. These soldiers needed their spirits healed too." "And how did you heal their spirits?" Sarah looked at the soldiers, then back at the king. "I helped them understand that they are good people who were ordered to do bad things. I helped them find ways to do good instead of harm. And I helped them forgive themselves for their past mistakes." King Mordun was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "You have done what you promised. You have healed soldiers that our best doctors could not help. According to our agreement, you and my daughter will live." "Thank you, Your Majesty. But I have been thinking about your methods," the king continued. "You claim that emotional healing affects physical healing. You say that treating people with dignity and compassion makes them stronger. If this is true, then perhaps—" The king paused, looking at his daughter and then at his soldiers. "Perhaps there are things about ruling that I do not understand." Sarah felt hope rising in her chest. "Your Majesty? I have ruled through fear and force because I believed it was the only way to maintain order. But if compassion can heal the unhealable, perhaps it can also create order better than fear can." Veltar stepped forward. "Father, does this mean—" "It means I'm offering the human doctor a position," the king said. "Dr. Chung, I want you to become my royal medical advisor. I want you to teach my doctors your methods. And I want you to help me understand how to rule in a way that heals instead of harms." Sarah was speechless. She had expected to be sent away, maybe with a reward of gold or jewels. She hadn't expected this. "Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I'm not qualified to advise on government policy. You are qualified to advise on treating people with dignity," the king said. "That seems to be something I need to learn." Sarah looked at Veltar, who was smiling with tears in her eyes. "There is one condition," Sarah said. "Princess Veltar should be your partner in this. She understands both your people's needs and the value of compassion. She should help lead these changes." The king looked at his daughter with new respect. "Yes, Veltar will be my official advisor on social reform. Together, you will help me build a kingdom where strength comes from caring for all our people, not from crushing them." 6 months later, Sarah stood in a new medical facility in the low-class district of the capital city. Zephyrian doctors worked alongside her, learning to treat the whole person, not just physical symptoms. Former soldiers served as counselors, helping people heal from trauma. Veltar had become a beloved figure throughout the kingdom, leading efforts to provide food, medicine, and education to all social classes. The weapons that had been meant to suppress the people were melted down and turned into medical equipment. "Do you ever miss Earth?" Veltar asked Sarah as they watched children playing in a new park built where a weapons factory used to stand. "Sometimes," Sarah said. "But I think this is where I'm supposed to be." This is where I can do the most good." "You have changed everything," Valtar said. "Not just for me, but for our whole civilization." Sarah smiled. "I just showed you what you already knew in your heart. Sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't in a pill or a machine. Sometimes it's just treating people like they matter." As they watched Zephyrian children and adults of all classes playing together, Sarah realized that this was the real reward. Not gold or titles or power, but the chance to help create a world where compassion was seen as strength, not weakness. It was the most human thing she could possibly do. And it had made all the difference.